Welcome. In this video, we will look at intellectual property and how it is being threatened in the current digital landscape. Intellectual property is a term used to describe creations of the mind for which rights can be owned and transferred to others. So we can think of things like books or papers that can be copyrighted, or images, logos, things that can be trademarked, or inventions that can be patented. These would all potentially fall under the definition of intellectual property. There are a few major types of intellectual property for us to discuss. There are more than this, but these are some of the most common types. Copyright is the term used to refer to the ownership of literary works. So if you are to write a book or to publish an academic article or publish an article on some websites even, you're going to sign a copyright agreement, which acknowledges that you own the rights over your work and that you are transferring a certain amount of those rights to the publisher of that work, potentially in exchange for some kind of financial remuneration. Second type is trademarks. So these would be uh, types of intellectual property that would be placed upon um, signs or logos or images that you have created and that might be of interest to others to license or use for various purposes. Patents, these would be for designs or inventions. And so um, often if you patent a work, you're patenting it within a specific country or context, and you may use that patent then to develop a product, or you may sell that right to others so they may develop that product. Another type of intellectual property that may be less commonly discussed are trade secrets, things that are unique to your company or context, things that you've developed within a work role potentially, where the ownership of those ideas or tools that have been developed uh, are owned by the company for which you work. And so they own the intellectual property rights for those ideas. And if you were to then turn around and try to sell those ideas to others, you could get in trouble for that. There are several risks pertaining to intellectual property in the modern digital landscape. One major issue is the unauthorized reproduction of works, whether that be in the case of plagiarism of a copyrighted work, taking somebody else's words and passing them off as your own, or not paying for the rights of that work and then selling it to others or making it available online. This is a pretty rampant issue with intellectual property. Um, an emerging issue is the use of intellectual property in the training of AI models. So you may have read about cases like Meta using copyrighted works or OpenAI using copyrighted works in training ChatGPT, the underlying GPT models. And in those cases, they often did not ask permission to use those works in order to train their models. They used uh, the the original underlying intellectual property without the permission of the intellectual property rights owners. And so that is a potential abuse, which we haven't yet to see major repercussions or implications of that unfold, but I imagine we will in coming months and years. Another is the distortion and manipulation of the original work. So taking pieces of a work and then passing it off as your own, or otherwise distorting what is said in the work and then misrepresenting it to others. So you could see that potentially in the case of misinformation or fake news, if somebody were to take information in a published work and then say that uh, creator made some statement that is out of context or not um, factually correct in any way. So, this is a brief introduction to intellectual property. In order to learn more about intellectual property, I have a few resources for you to peruse. So, one is Investopedia's Guide to the Major Types of Intellectual Property. So, it's going to go over those major types I discussed in this video in a bit more detail and with a few more examples. And then I'm also including an article by Collateral Base, and this is talking about some of the intellectual property issues that have emerged with large language models. So please check those out if you have time and interest. And thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next recording.